Hi, in this video I'm going to walk you guys through some of the advanced quantization features in Logic X. Now, we have MIDI in this project, and I've got some audio too. We're going to ignore the audio for now, the audio file for now. But we're going to look at the MIDI, which has been put in a couple different ways. So what we're going to see is that the trumpet parts here were performed in manually, and the other parts here were all kind of written in. So if we look at the MIDI data that's there, I'm going to hit Command 7. I'm going to hit Command 7 and highlight the grand piano, for example, and we'll see, right, based on this information here, the position, right, the velocity, and the length of each note. You can see that they're all the same. The length is all the same, more or less, right? And the position, when we read the position numbers here in this list, this is the list editor, and this is basically telling me that this is bar 13, beat 1, division 1, subdivision 1, or tick 1. That's where this is falling. And so you can tell then by looking at this that we have a chord, a 3-note chord, on the downbeat of bar 13. We can see that it's G2, G3, and G4, and the velocities are slightly different, but the length is the same. So if we look at this in the score editor, for example, if I hit Command 5, we'll see that first note is G, right, in all three parts. Right. So let's just listen to this for a second, and I want you to kind of listen carefully to how loose or how rigid it all feels. Now, what we should be, if your listening matches my listening, it sounds good, but it's also a little kind of metronomic. It's a little robotic. So let's listen. Now the loop is beginning again. Right? So this is fine. The music is, I think it's fine. I wrote it. I wrote it as this was the example for one of your videos that we talked about composite, actually additive rhythm. But so we have the piano, we have the bass, and we can see, and we have shaker. What is this? This is what is it? This says shaker, but I'm not sure. Actually, let's solo this for example. I didn't even check. Oh, that's the clave. Okay, so that's the clave on. It's part of the orchestral kit. So clave, right, shaker, right. And if we listen to the trumpets, right, we're going to listen to the trumpets together. So I use staccato and legato trumpets, so we can get kind of both the sharpness and the kind of sustained tones as well. We can hear that part there. So you can see if we look at them together. Right, and this was performed in, I'll show you that in a second, but this is what it looks like together. So, right, the legato trumpets have these tones held, where the staccato trumpets, there's no point in doing that. So that's what we have in terms of the trumpet lines. And we could see that these, you can kind of determine that these were performed in, right, because you can see, compared to the piano part, for example, right, sorry, I guess I can't have it. There we go. So compared to the piano part, right, we can see that everything is very flush to the grid. Right, when we see all the numbers on the rightmost position here, that's the tick position, that they're all number 1. But if we look at the trumpet parts, we can see there's a variety of them, and we're also seeing, in this case, yeah. We see continuous controller data as well. This was me kind of pressing the keyboard a little bit heavier on certain parts. We could just actually hide that. I just click on the controller here. That's the filter that shows you, like you can see it or not see it if you want to. Okay, but so what we have here then, if we're listening pretty closely, is we have the trumpets feel a little on the loose side, and that's actually what you want. While everything else is a little bit, it's really flush to the grid. Every other part, right? The clave, I should probably rewrite that just so I don't forget it myself. clave. That's all very specific on the grid, all of it rigid to the grid. The shaker is, the bass is, and the piano is. So all those parts are very much like almost like the same kind of thing you would expect from a drum machine because it's all penciled in, right? And the trumpet parts were played in. So we have kind of two different feels going at the same time, and we kind of don't want that. But this is a good example to use because we have both types. Now, what we want to do is we want to actually, if you think about how human performance actually works, right? We don't get the kind of perfection that we associate with, right, this kind of flush to the grid. That doesn't actually happen. We do expect a kind of variety of velocities, but we don't expect rhythmic perfection at this kind of level. And in a way, it starts to sound a little bit, it gets a little tiresome. If I just solo the piano and we listen, actually in this case I can just solo, since it's looping 4 bars, we just solo 4 bars here. And if we just listen to the piano part by itself, it'll start to feel a little bit wooden to us. Let's listen to it. Right, so it's musically interesting, but it lacks a certain kind of life. And so how can we use logic to kind of breathe that into it? Right? Because one of the dangers here is that we have this great tool in Logic X, right? It can do a lot for us, right? I can pencil this in and it will play it perfectly. And in a way, this is too perfect, right? Even though we have these digital tools available to us, we have kind of inherited a history of listening that is based on human performance, and humans don't perform this way. So let's figure out how we can use logic to kind of make this a little bit more human. Now, one of the things that's available to us is a filter. Actually, not a filter. Sorry, it's not a filter. It is a what's it called? A MIDI transform. That's what it is. Let me unsolo this. I was concentrating for a second. I have to sneeze, and I'm rubbing my nose to make sure I don't do it. Okay, so I'm going to extend this cycle again, just so we get the full region. So I'm just going to mess around with this. I'm going to highlight all of these, right? And if we look at it in the score editor, we can see how these all kind of line up against for each other. I'm in the. It's not caught up here. So let me get this all in one kind of small. So we can see it all at once. Here we go. I'm going to hide these just to get the screen real estate going. Right, this is basically what we've got. Okay, so this is what we're looking at rhythmically. Now, what I want to do is one at a time. I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to go into Functions, MIDI Transform, Humanize. Okay, that pulls up this dialog box, and at the same time, I'm going to pull back open the event list editor so we can see the MIDI data expressed as a list. Now, what the Humanize preset in the transform window does is it basically throws in a little bit of random values into the 3 parameters that are going to most closely affect the sense of looseness, the sense of musicality that we associate with performance. So it's going to add or subtract a random value of up to 10 ticks in either direction. So what we're going to see then is this number start to get modified. Okay, that's the position. Right, so that's going to be basically the point of attack. The length is basically the duration, how long that note is held. And so that's going to add or subtract a value up to 10 ticks in either direction. to the length. Now the velocity will have also a random value imposed upon it. So it's going to add or subtract up to 10 points in either direction. And so in the case of the value, right, the velocity value, the maximum velocity is going to be 127. Right? The minimum velocity is 0. But it starts to become inaudible much sooner. You can see that. Right? Most of these. We're going to want to keep the value in a reasonable range. So if we wind up doing something we don't like, we can always go back in and modify it. Now, so what I'm going to do then is, actually I'm going to also pop open the piano roll so we can see that. So you can see that these notes are not selected. So if I actually hit select only, now we can see, right, everything's been selected and the lights changed here. And now I'm going to hit operate only. I didn't have to do that. I could have just hit select and operate, or just I could have selected them all and then hit operate. But I'm going to hit operate only now. Now watch what happens to these numbers in the event list. I'm going to hit once, twice, 3 times. I'll hit it one more time. Actually, I'm going to hit it again. And now let's listen to it. Let's solo it so we can hear just the piano part. So that does sound just slightly more loose, right? We're basically adding a bit of randomness to it. And these numbers didn't change too drastically. When we're looking at the ticks here, we have a number up to 240. So it's 1 to 240. So when we see 240, what that means is that it actually just nudged it 1 tick to the left instead of to the right, right? So because it can go in either direction. So I'm going to actually hit this a few more times because we're also going to, well, this isn't the beginning, this is the beginning but not the end of the process. So I'm going to hit this a couple more times. So we can start to hear that this sounds a little bit more like a human being playing it, right? Because we don't expect all 3, if they're playing 3 notes simultaneously with their 2 hands, in reality, at the microsecond level, right, we're not going to hear them hit those notes precisely simultaneously, even if they were trying really hard. Right, we can hear kind of a sense of relaxing and pushing and this sort of stuff, and that's all happening. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually repeat this process for these other parts real fast. So I'm just going to, I'll do it a different way this time. Let's open up the piano roll editor. So now I'm going to actually hit select all within there, and I'll go functions, MIDI transform, humanize. Now let's also, actually let's solo out the bass before we do this. Okay. Okay, now let's do it. Now we can just hit operate only because they're already selected. Operate, 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 operate. So a few more times. You can see like the numbers are changing, but they're not going crazy in terms of how far away they are from their original ones. Let's listen now. Now this one got moved before the region start, so I'm going to actually fix it. I'm just going to put it right on the region start, just because we want to not lose that for this purpose, for listening to it. Right, so now if there's a couple, maybe I want to make an adjustment. Maybe, let's unselect them. Maybe I just want this value to be a little higher. I can just drag that one up, you know. Maybe this one a little bit less. So you can always audition it again and make some adjustments if you don't like anything. Okay, let's say that I like that okay for now. Now, we haven't yet listened to them in combination, and this is where we might start to feel a little sense of, oh, well, maybe this isn't going to work well together. But we're going to address that in a minute. So let's move on to the shaker. Let's solo the shaker. Obviously, this is really rigid. So let's get in there. Piano roll editor, select them all, and functions, MIDI transform, humanize. Do it again. Operate. Change this. Now let's listen to it. All right, so a couple of them, I might not want these to be. Oops. Sorry. The fully loudest ones, I might not want the shaker at 127. It's not that important to part anyway, right? So what we could do then, let me show you a different transform. We could say, we like this. Now we like the randomness of the position and the randomness of the length, but maybe we want to control a little bit more the velocity range. There's a second transform we could use. I'm going to hit select all again. Functions, MIDI transform, random velocity. So now it's just going to affect the velocity. And I can say, I don't want anything higher than, let's say, I don't want anything louder than 102. So I'm just going to hit that a couple times right now. Or maybe I don't like it that quiet. Some of them, I'll shrink that range. Sorry, I didn't hit operate yet. There we go. Okay, let's go on to the next one. The clave. Now in this case, let's say, for example, let's say I like the velocity exactly as it is, but I just want to kind of mess around a little bit with the position. So I'm actually just going to take the velocity off. I'm just going to say, you know what, let's, or I can just, actually I don't know if I can do that. Let's just set that to 0, so it's not going to do anything. Now I hit operate, and we'll see, right, these numbers are staying the same, but the position is changing. Okay, now let's listen to it. Okay, so we like that. Now, let's unsolo the clave. And what we're going to do next is we're going to go to the inspector. I'm going to select the piano, and the quantizer is set to off. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the 16th note. And what it did, we see right away, that made all these values go back to 1, which is, it's like saying, oh, I just undid all that work. But we're going to incorporate something called Q strength. So basically what we're about to do is kind of fix some of the randomness that we just kind of inserted into the process here. So what I'm saying now is I'm going to push everything right back to flush to the grid, but Logic remembers all the positions that we've been moving these notes to. I'm going to move something called the Q strength, and I'm going to have a Q strength of, let's say, I don't know, 60. Now with a Q strength of 60, it pushes, that's a way of saying, push the MIDI back 60%, or let's push it only 60% to the quantized value that's set here. Okay? So it's still 40%, basically that's saying it's 40% messed up. So we could say even a little less if we wanted to. We could say let's have a Q strength of 40, so it's still going to sound loose. Right? Now what we'll do is we'll do this in all the parts. Let's change this to 16th note, right? Everything goes back to where it was, but let's have a Q strength again. I can also double click and hit 40, right? I'll do the same thing here. Q strength of 40. Now, I'm choosing the same value in each of them because what it's going to do is it's going to kind of treat it like we have an ensemble of musicians and they're all playing together, and it's going to feel tight, but it's going to feel tight in terms of the ensemble, but it's still going to feel loose in terms of each individual part's actual kind of positional feel, if that makes sense. Right, I'm going to do the same thing here. Now, the difference between the 16th note and 16th note swing. Now, the swing wasn't doing anything because everything was already rigid to the grid. So here we're back to the 16th note, and here I'm going to go again down to 40. And now I'm also going to do the same thing for the trumpet parts that were live. Now, again, if I put a 16th note, look, it pushes them all to the grid. But because the point is I want the trumpets and the other musicians to all be part of the same group, right? So here we have trumpets are going to be 40, right? So again, it'll sound not wrong, but it will sound loose. Again, 16th note. So I'm doing this, and I wouldn't just do it for the single region. I would do it for the entire composition. I'm just doing it for one region because that's the one, because I don't want to bother playing the whole thing. Oops, I'm overshooting here. Okay, so that gives us all of them. Now let's listen to this all as a group, and we should feel a change. It's a subtle change, but it should sound more musical. It should sound more human in its performance, even though the only thing that was performed in and was these trumpet parts, and that was on a keyboard. And the good thing is, actually, let's compare that to the previous region, which should sound the same, but without any of that quantization fun. So we'll have wooden. Actually, let's do it this way. Right, that's rigid, now loose. Rigid. Do it this way too. This is how so this should go back to rigid. Okay, there we go. So that's what we're going to be looking for. We're going to be looking to see that you have kind of made each part both musical, and we're looking for you to have quantized them in a similar manner, regardless of whether they were performed in, right? We want the performed in parts to work well with the non-performed in parts. We want everything to be kind of fluid, but musical. Okay? Have fun.